professionals to conduct and publish high-quality research. His areas of expertise include musculoskeletal and rheumatological disorders, pediatric disorders, and neurological disorders. It is pertinent to mention that Dr. Farooq has 300 research publications, including 2,444 citations and 200,000 reads. No doubt, Dr. Farooq has an ideal profile to himself. A note for all attendees of this session: all attendees are requested to drop their questions in the chat box. Question and answer session will be at the very end of the session. Once Dr. Farooq concludes his session, then the question answers will be at the very end of the session. Okay, so all attendees can drop their messages or questions in the chat box, and we will then put the questions in front of Dr. Farooq at the very end of the session. Now, without any further delay, I invite Dr. Farooq Azam Rathore to please start the session. The podium is yours, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, Faizan. Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam. Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, just give me a second. Let me share my slide. Can you confirm kijega, then I'll start.
Okay.
So can you please confirm that you can see my slides as well?
Yes, sir, we can see the first slide.
Okay, thank you very much, Faizan, for the introduction. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Kafi kuch introduction ho chuka hai. So basically, we are going to start with critical appraisal of articles. I have around 35 minutes at my disposal. मैंने आपसे request की थी introduction की. Thank you very much. आपने introduce करवाया. It seems that we have attendees from all around Pakistan, and most of you are undergraduate medical students. Fantastic, excellent. So, and most of you have not done a critical appraisal of articles. So probably this webinar is going to at least give you some directions and some ideas of how to do that, because it's an absolutely essential skill for anyone who is involved in research and writing or wants to provide quality care to their patients. A couple of disclaimers before I formally start my presentation. The first is that, this is basically a summarized version of my 3-hour workshop on evidence-based medicine, which I often do for both for undergraduate medical students and for residents and for consultants as well. So obviously now I have 35 minutes at my disposal, so it won't be possible for me to cover all aspects. But I'm going to leave with you questions, and I'm going to give you directions. I'm going to share with you slides and sort of websites that hopefully are going to make your journey easier for you. Number 2, please remember, as the word says, critical appraisal is a skill. It is not something that you can just learn in a single webinar or by listening to lectures. It is a skill. So as you cannot learn driving or maybe swimming, but just seeing YouTube videos or seeing lectures, you have to actually integrate the principles that I'm going to tell you. You have to explore the websites that I'm going to share, and only then your skills at critical appraisal of articles of all sorts are going to improve. And the third and probably the most important is that, basically this is a forum for undergraduate medical students. So I have actually tailored my presentation as per the need of a medical student. So it's not going to be very elaborative. It's not going to be very statistically overloaded. I have tried my best to keep it simple so that my students can understand what I'm trying to get across. So the idea is not to मैं अपना knowledge झाड़ने नहीं आया, ना ही मैं slide दिखाने आया हूँ. Basically, my aim is to sort of give you direction that how important it is to do a critical review and how easy it is to do a critical appraisal if you know how to do it systematically. So the first important point of this presentation is that please understand that critical appraisal of article or critical appraisal of literature is not something that is only related to medical research and writing. You need to understand that, because whenever we talk of research, writing, critical appraisal, article, literature, automatically people think that we are only focused on medical research and writing, which is essential, absolutely important part of what we need to do. But you need to understand that critical appraisal of article is something not only related to medical research and writing. There might be someone who has never done medical research and writing, who is not interested in doing medical research and writing. But as a healthcare professional, all of us see patients on a daily basis. That is our primary duty, and that is our primary responsibility, our primary job description, to provide good medical care to our patients. And here is the role of evidence-based medicine, that the care that should be provided to the patient should be evidence-based medicine. And of the three components of evidence-based medicine, one of the important components is best external evidence. And how do you get that best external evidence? You get it by literature search and then by critically analyzing the articles that you have downloaded or identified. So this is actually a part of the whole paradigm of evidence-based medicine. Obviously, it also feeds into medical research and writing, because while doing a systematic review or maybe even a narrative review, or maybe even just writing your article, you would like to quote and cite high quality articles. You would like to quote and cite good quality articles, the articles that have something unique, something that actually feeds in your discussion. So that's why you need to know how to do a critical appraisal of article and to identify such high quality articles. There have been many definitions of critical appraisal, but personally, I like this by Hill and Spittlehouse that was given back in 2006. The important things I have highlighted. The first thing is, again, critical appraisal is a systematic process. It is a skill, just like a surgical skill, just like other skill that you learn in life. So you learn any skill if you follow a systematic approach, if you have a checklist, if you know what to do and what not to do. Okay. And basically, this systematic approach is used to examine the research that is in front of you. And your basic aim is to, first of all, assess the results, the quality, and what is the relevance of these results to the patients that you see in your practice. And you use it before you make a decision in order to provide a quality service to your patients. A simple definition is that critical appraisal is a systematic process which is used to identify the strength or weaknesses of any article, not only research article, any article. It could be a systematic review, it could be an observational study, or it could be a randomized controlled trial, or simple an observational clinical trial.
Sir, your voice is distorted a bit.
My apologies. I think I got disconnected. Just give me a second. मैं reconnect कर रहा हूँ. Just give me a second.
Okay, sir.
Is my slide again visible and I'm audible?
Yes, sir. Slide is visible and you are audible.
Sorry, Mazar, they are the perils of living in Pakistan. Backup होना चाहिए. अल्लाह शुक्र है backup चल पड़ा. I'm back online. Sorry, Mazar. Okay, so we were discussing the need for critical appraisal for an article in the times of ChatGPT. So you need to remember that in the last 30 years, it has been explosion of medical knowledge and research and writing. For example, there was an estimate that back in 2012, 11 years ago, more than 1.8 million scientific articles only in the biomedical field were published in a single year. 1.8 million articles. And the second thing is the time is limited for each of us. And you medical students are lucky in a sense that you do have a lot of time at your disposal. But as you grow, as you go in the practical life, you become consultant, you become residents, the time is going to shorten. And we all have these 24 hours in life. So what to do and how to make that work-life balance in which you can actually read articles, make an informed decision, and also do other things in life as well. So just to give you a quick example. So Medline or PubMed, which is the first stop shop for almost every healthcare professional all around the globe, at present, it indexes around 35 million abstract and titles. 3.5 crore. Let's assume for the sake of discussion, only 1% of this 35 million is relevant to your and my need. For example, it is related to my own specialty or the practice that I do. It still makes 3.5 lakh, 0.35 million articles. If you were to read 95 articles articles each day for the next 10 years, only then you will be able to finish these 0.35 million articles. And by the time you finish these articles, I'm pretty sure 35 million more articles related to your own field would have been published, which means it's almost impossible for a human being to keep a track of all the research that is being published on a daily basis. So what do you need to do? You need to actually prioritize and you need to do a critical appraisal of articles. Number two, you have to decide which source you would like to use, from which journal and which database you would like to read articles, because there are so many out there. And how do you study? Do you start studying from the start and you go to the end, or you start skimming the abstract first, or you make your decision based only on the title? Or would you like to focus more on the methodology or results? And even if you read the whole article, what you believe and what not to believe. I mean, again, WhatsApp is zamana hai, and you get so much of misinformation on daily basis that you actually get bogged down. That's why you need to develop that critical eye, that what is right and what is wrong. And even if you do everything, article bhi pad liya, samajh bhi aa gayi, usme achhi cheez nikal bhi li. The point is, you and me, most of us at present are working in Pakistan, a developing country. Our healthcare system is different from the healthcare system, let's say in Europe, Australia, Japan, Northern America. And most of the scientific article at present, at least the biomedical literature, it comes from the West. Around 85% of the articles and the medical healthcare literature comes from the West. And many a time the things that we read, they are not actually relevant to the patient that I see. They are not available. They are not applicable because of many reasons. And I'm frustrated that what should I do? So that's why you need to do critical appraisal of an article. And it is not something that is, not without advantages. First of all, if you are in a habit of critically appraising an article, you will be able to identify high quality, relevant information as per your need from this jungle of information that is out there, number one. And a very important thing is you will be able to, inshallah, understand the difference between statistical significance and clinical significance. Please remember, people play around with statistics and they publish trials and articles based on a very small number of patients, let's say 30, 40, 50, and then they will start presenting the result was very significant. The p-value was less than 0.05 or less than 0.001. But please remember that in diseases that is very, very prevalent, like millions of people have those diseases. So simply having an article of 20, 30, 40 patients with a statistical significant result does not mean that it is actually applicable to the real world out there. And there is a difference between statistical significance on the paper and clinical significance on the ground, on the patient that you see in front of you. Critical appraisal also help you develop what we call speed reading habit. So ultimately, the more articles you critically appraise, your speed of reading scientific article also improves. And probably many of you would actually agree with me. A couple of months or years back, once you started reading your first scientific article, it might have been very difficult, overwhelming, और कुछ समझ नहीं आती थी. जब आपने बार-बार scientific articles पढ़े, now you can actually make an outline or a sense of the article that ये कहना क्या चाहते हैं. So if you do critical appraisal regularly, you will develop the speed reading, which means you are going to save a lot of time. And ultimately, it feeds into a better patient care. You cannot, at least I cannot provide patient care based on the knowledge that I gained 25 years back in late 90s as a medical student. I have to continuously update and upgrade my knowledge. How do I upgrade my knowledge? I upgrade my knowledge by doing a good literature search, identifying the high quality articles, and then critically appraising what is right, what is wrong. So ultimately, it all feeds into a better patient care and a better healthcare system for the society. So critical appraisal is important. And this is my personal observation. If you develop a habit of critical appraisal, it would actually help you become a better medical writer and a better peer reviewer for the medical journals. How? Once you are in a habit of identifying the strength and weaknesses of a research article, you do not make the same mistakes once you are writing such articles yourself, and then you're able to identify these mistakes in articles that are being sent to you for peer review. So critical appraisal के बहुत सारे फायदे होते हैं, personal भी, professional भी, और क्या नाम है, society को भी. Having said that, everything has a positive side and a negative side. Critical appraisal is also not without critique. The biggest critique against critical appraisal is, again, lack of time. And people say we don't have time and it's a very time consuming focus exercise. Why should I spend 1.5 or maybe 2 or 3 hours in critically appraising an article once I can simply skim through the abstract and result and get the knowledge what I want to seek. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, yes, you don't need to be a statistician to do a critical appraisal, but at least you should be familiar with the statistical terms that are being used in that article. That's going to give you an edge over the people who don't use or don't know these kind of terminologies. And obviously, if you do a whole critical appraisal of 2 and 3 articles, you spend half a day doing critical appraisal, and still you do not get the answer that you were looking for your patient, yes, it's going to be frustrating. And please remember, a critical appraisal does not mean that you're always going to get the answer you are seeking. Sometimes you are not going to get the answer, and then you might have to change your database. You might have to change your source. You might have to change the type of study you are seeking. You might have to change your journal. And before I start off with actual critical appraisal, you also need to understand that critical appraisal is not a negative dismissal of any piece of research. You don't do critical appraisal that you want to dismiss जो भी publish हुआ है झूठ है और डॉक्टर जाली research कर रहे हैं, and you're like, what happened in COVID-19? A large group of public and even healthcare professionals started saying that, most of the COVID-19 research is not accurate. So you don't do critical appraisal with the aim I'm going to dismiss everything that comes in front of me. Critical appraisal. Critical appraisal is actually critically evaluating each and every aspect of the article, not simply summarizing it using the chat PDF option. So it's not critical appraisal. Then, I'm sorry, again, I'm having some issue with my internet. I'll wait for a couple of seconds. Am I audible? Okay, I'll move on. So critical appraisal is not some... thank you. I'm sorry, बार-बार पूछना पड़ता है यार, वो इंटरनेट का मसला आता है. No problem. So yeah. So critical appraisal is not something based purely on statistical analysis. Please remember, there are usually there are 5 components of a research article: the title and the abstract, introduction, material and methodology, results, discussion, and conclusion. So it is result and methodology is only one part of the whole article. And you can't simply say, because the stats were not appropriate, this article I'm going to dismiss that. You can't do that. And it is not something that has to be performed only by experts. Please remember that. You are a medical student, you are authorized, and you must actually start doing critical appraisal right at this stage. जब तक हमारी स्टेज को पहुंचोगे, खुद ब खुद एक्सपर्ट बन चुके होगे. And I'm going to show you some a particular website about critical appraisal and evidence-based medicine that is being maintained by medical students, and it is respected all around the globe. So now coming to the actual question that how to do critical appraisal of an article. Some general points. Number 1, there is no single gold standard instrument available. ये बात clear कर लीजिए. कोई gold standard नहीं है. बहुत सारे tools और instruments available हैं जो आपको पसंद है, जो आपको easy लगता है, जिसके आप expert बन चुके हो, बार-बार करो और क्या नाम है उसमें महारत हासिल कर लो. So it's better to be मतलब कहते हैं ना कि jack of all trades, master of none. जमाना है mastery का. आपने master बनना है किसी एक tool का, किसी एक क्या नाम है checklist का. I would recommend that. Then again, जो मैंने बात की थी systematic approach. A structured approach to critical appraisal could potentially improve the quality of this process. So you want to critically appraise an article, you have to follow a systematic and structured approach. I'll share a couple of them right now. And simple checklist can be useful to screen out research that is of low quality or little relevance. So the biggest advantage of a checklist is that as you start doing the checklist, agar shuru ke 2 or 3 points they indicate that the article is of low quality, you can actually stop there. Do not read whole of the article and move on to the next article. That is the biggest advantage of a checklist. You don't have to read the whole article and then decide, oh, it was a low quality article, I just spent 45 minutes reading a low quality article. No, the checklist will tell you at the start whether this article is of high quality or low quality. Should you invest your time and energies in reading that article in detail? So now what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to share some reputable global resources and checklists for this critical appraisal of articles. And then I'm going to show you a simpler approach as well. Again, the same thing. We are inundated by so much of information that sometimes it becomes difficult to know what is appropriate, what is not. Again, मैं वो बात करूंगा. Jack of all trades, master of none. ऐसी वो बात नहीं है. इस वक्त many resources and checklists are available online. You can go and check all of them. That's fine. But I'm only going to recommend top 3. And these are reputable, global, being used all around the globe in different capacities by different healthcare professionals. And the most important thing is that these checklists cater for different kind of study designs. Study design बहुत सारे हो सकते हैं भाई. it could be a randomized control trial, it could be a meta-analysis, it could be a systematic review, it could be a simple observational study, it could be a diagnostic study, it could be a prognostic study. Every study has a different kind of like introduction, material, method, result, and discussion. So you can't have a single checklist and then check all these kind of studies. So these websites, they offer you different kind of checklist for different kind of studies. That's the first thing. So first of all, I would like to recommend is the CASP checklist. And a very important aspect of CASP checklist is that CASP has also online modules. So you can actually go online and you can buy these modules for probably 35 pounds, and you can get access to all of these modules. Very helpful and useful modules. These checklists from CASP are available online. You can go online, read the article and fill them online live, or you can download them, print it out, and you can fill them as you start reading your article. Very useful checklist, CASP checklist. Second resource that I'm going to recommend is from Oxford, Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, the Critical Appraisal tool developed by CEBM. Again, these are available free of cost, and we all know that Oxford has a huge history of not only in innovations in medical science, but also in evidence-based medicine. So again, this is a high-quality resource available free of cost in a pretty sort of easy manner. You can go online, again, download the checklist and start evaluating different kind of articles that you are reading. John Bridge Institute is based on Adelaide, Australia, JBI. Again, you can see different organization working in different part of the world, coming with a different perspective. But the aim is to improve the process of critical appraisal of literature. So the critical appraisal by JBI are also fantastic. They're available free of cost. And simply just to give an idea, even if you're trying to appraise a single case report, a case series, maybe a text and opinion piece, uske liye bhi they offer you a critical appraisal guideline or a checklist. So these things are available online for each one of you to go and explore and master. So please go online and start exploring these checklists. This is an excellent website which is being maintained by students. It is Students for Best Evidence in collaboration with Cochrane. And as you can see that this is a website maintained by undergraduate healthcare student, both medical student, biological sciences, physical therapy, occupational therapy, allied healthcare sciences. This is a highly recommended website. This website not only provides you with simple tools, but it also actually has a lot of articles that are critically appraised, and they are uploaded with all list and explanation. So you can actually go online, download the article yourself, do your own critical appraisal, and then compare your critical appraisal with a critical appraisal that has been done and posted online on this website. Apart from that, as you can see, topics and resources, this website offers you a lot of resources and tutorials in understanding biostatistics, medical research, and writing. And the best thing is it is being maintained by undergraduate medical students from all around the globe. So please go online and explore Student for Best Evidence. Another way that you can assess and critically appraise a research article is by using a checklist. And this goes both ways. So whether you are writing a research article or maybe any kind of article, or you want to review or critically appraise any kind of article, you should actually be doing it by reporting guidelines. So this is one-stop shop, Equator Network. It has the reporting guideline for more than 400 different type of studies. So the basic concept is that, for example, you want to write or conduct a randomized control trial. So this will give you a proper a guideline, a reporting guideline, and that reporting guideline will consist of, depending on the type of study, 15, 20, 30, in some cases even 40 items. And it would actually tell you that what is supposed to be in a title of a randomized control trial, how do you write an abstract of a randomized control trial, what must be mentioned in an introduction of a randomized control trial, methodology, how it should be written, what about the result, how it should be displayed, and everything. So you can actually not only write your article as per the reporting guidelines, but you can also critically appraise and evaluate a published article based on the reporting guidelines, because they are very clear and they give you a very beautiful explanation of different parts that are supposed to be available in different kind of studies. But having said that, please remember it does not matter how many resources you have. If you don't know how to use them, it will never be enough. Many of these resources are available online for around more than a decade. And still, I go around in my country, Pakistan. I ask my colleagues, my people, my senior, my juniors, my students, and many of my colleagues are not well versed with these free tools and resources that are available out there. Each one of you has an access to internet, mobile phone, laptop. Please remember, हमारे ज़माने बेटे ये चीजें नहीं थी. We had to go out. We had to talk to people. We had to actually ring them up. We had to take time. You people can actually go online and at a single click, you can have an access to a whole plethora of information. So please, having resources is not enough. You should actually go online, explore these resources, become a master, and then do it again and again till the time you become achieve mastery in this field. Having said that, this was, you can say, the difficult part. Now comes the easier part. And as they say, the simple things matter most in life. So I'll give you a sort of a very brief and a sort of a simplified version that you can probably start doing right after this webinar. You can divide this into three basic questions that you need to ask: the general appraisal and then the detailed appraisal. So if you don't, even if you don't have a very good insight and grasp on statistical analysis, you can still do the basic question and general appraisal, which will give you an idea whether this article is worth quoting, citing, and using in your clinical practice or not. So number one, because our mother language for most of us is not English, and people tend to get impressed by articles that are published in high impact factor journals. So please tend to remember this thing, that scientific jargon and complex use of language is not a sign of a good article. Good article, even in Lancet, BMJ, and JAMA, are written in simple, plain English, because the main aim of writing an article is to communicate science, not to impress someone with your methodology and your English writing skills. And please also remember, always be critical. Even high-ranking impact factor journals, they can have low-quality articles or articles that can be later retracted. And we saw this recently in COVID-19 as well, that articles from good journals like BMJ and Lancet, they were ultimately retracted. So always be critical and don't get bogged down by the name of the journal. If you are short of time, probably instead of focusing on the discussion and introduction, which are generally like background and foreground, you should be focused more on the research question, because a good research question defines what kind of research will be carried out. And a study design is actually the pivot around which the whole of the study revolves. And study design has to be taken into consideration, because one study design cannot be changed into another study design if it is of poor quality. A randomized control trial cannot be converted into a cross-sectional survey. A cross-sectional survey cannot be a retrospective chart review, and a chart review cannot be a case series. So probably if you are short of time, these are the three important things that you need to focus on. The research question, it is appropriate, robust or not. What is the study design? Is it appropriate as per the need of the research question? And what are the outcomes that are discussed in that articles? And again, I'm saying it again, you will learn statistics as you go. So if you don't have a very good grasp on statistics, still you don't need to worry. You can still do a general appraisal of a research article. So the basic question that you need to ask whenever you are reading an article of any sort, a research article, randomized control trial, or maybe a systematic review, the first question that you need to ask is the journal peer reviewed? Because if the journal is peer reviewed, and usually most of the good journals in the world nowadays are peer reviewed, a peer reviewed means that whatever article or publication are sent to that journal, they are then sent to expert who anonymously, or sometimes they know the identity of each other. They review the article and then they give certain comments. So the article is either rejected, accepted, or revised based on those comments. Peer review means that at least there is a mechanism in place at that journal which ensures quality of the articles. Number one. Number two, is the journal reputable? The example is of, again, the same thing. You want to buy a burger. So if you go to a high-end a burger shop located in a posh locality, at least it is reputable, and most likely the ingredients they are using will be good, and they have a reputation to cater for. But if you buy the same burger from a thade wala, the burger might be very, very tasty, but you're not very sure that what kind of burger and ingredients are there. So if you have an option, you might want to go for a high-ranking reputable journal like JAMA, Lancet, BMJ. Why? Because these kind of journals have a legacy of more than 2 centuries, which they want to protect and which they want to project. Impact factor is not that important, but then some people say, a high impact factor journal mean more reputable journal. Yes, I agree with that. And but again, the same thing, peer critical, because even high ranking impactful journal can have poor quality articles as well. If a journal is associated with a professional organization, it means that professionals of that particular field are very closely linked and related to that journal, and they are sending their articles and their contribution to that journal, which means that this journal is being monitored by multiple people in that particular specialty. So, like Pakistan Journal of Surgeon might be having a journal, Pakistan Journal of Pediatrics will be having a journal in their own specialty. So if a journal is associated with a professional organization, national or international, this means that it is more reputable, and you might want to believe what they write as compared to some other journal. And if it is a journal that is often quoted by your supervisor, your teacher, probably it is a journal that everyone looks forward to. And it is a journal from which you should be reading your articles and quoting and citing more. Coming to the title and abstract. So whenever you read a title, please remember title is the front face or front page of any article. If the title is not conveying any useful information, if it is incoherent, it is confusing, I'm not judging, but probably the article is going to be of low quality and incoherent as well. And again, going back to the checklist. So the checklist for a randomized control trial clearly mentioned that the title of a randomized control trial must mention the word randomized control trial and if any blinding has been done. And similarly, a systematic review must mention the word systematic review or meta-analysis right in the title. So if an article is a meta-analysis or a systematic review or a randomized control trial, and that has not even been mentioned in the title, probably that article has some other issues as well, and you might not be wasting your time reading that article. Then abstract. Abstract kya hai? Khulasa. It is abstract is the compact khulasa of the whole, and it actually tells you what is written in the whole article. So if you can identify important information and main finding by reading the abstract, probably it's a good article and you should actually keep on reading through the article. If you read the abstract and the title, they are incoherent, they don't give you much information, and you are more confused as you started your journey, probably you should stop here and start reading another article. And if the keyword that are being used in the abstract are similar to the keyword that you are using in your own research article, probably it's a good match. And this article is going to give you high quality information that you are seeking. Coming to the introduction, you can read any article, but because knowledge is expanding at an exponential speed, so probably it is important that first of all, you read articles that are published in the last 5 years. Don't read, if there's a need, do read that, but there is no need of reading articles that are very, very old, unless there are seminal articles. Seminal articles, for example, if we take the example of genetics, so the seminal article, the article by Watson and Crick, the helical structure of DNA, that was the article that defined genetics. It's a 60 years old article, but it is still relevant today. Then if the article attempts to answer the same question as your clinical question, again, it's a good fit, and you should be reading through this article more. Again, aims, and we teach this, CPSP asks this, your university also tells you that every introduction should end with the aims and objective of the article. If they are clearly stated and they are very closely matched to the aims and objective of your critical appraisal, probably it's a good article and you should keep on reading. Coming to the material and method, the first thing that you should notice is whether the ethical concerns are appropriately addressed. I know still in Pakistan, people are not much concerned about ethical concerns. अभी भी जाली किस्म के वो ERC approval मिल जाते हैं, स्टडी हो जाती है, उसके बाद ERC के साइन हो रहे होते हैं, सुपरवाइजर भी बेचारे माशाल्लाह ऐसे उन्हें कोई आइडिया नहीं होता, स्टूडेंट भी बहुत तेजियां दिखाते हैं. But please remember, if you want to compete in a global world, if you want to learn good things and you want to do the right thing, you need to understand that ethical concerns are the pivot on which the research is evaluated and judged. It does the end does not justify the mean. Sir, I did a very good research, but I forgot to take the ethical approval. Your research is not worthy of quoting, reading, and citing. You need to understand that. And then the study design is valid for your question. For example, you are looking for randomized control trial, and the article you are trying to read is actually a cross-sectional survey or case series. So probably you should not be reading this article because your need is a randomized control trial, and this is something else. So study design is absolutely important. If an article clearly mentions the inclusion-exclusion criteria, it would help you make a decision whether this is a valid article or not. How? Number one, you have to clearly mention what kind of patient you enrolled with disease and what kind of patient you excluded and on what basis. And the other problem is, again, I mentioned the word clinical significance and statistical significance. So this is also the problem with inclusion exclusion criteria. Sometimes while doing research, the inclusion criteria is so clean cut that you hardly get any patient in real life that fit in that criteria, which means that this research article, which looks very good, is not very valid to the patient that you see in your daily basis. For example, someone is doing a research on osteoarthritis, and they say, I'm going to enroll only males between 40 to 60 years of age with grade 2 osteoarthritis in one knee only without any comorbids. But in the real world out there, you will not find these kind of patient. You will find patient with osteoarthritis of both knees, osteoarthritis of 10-year duration, osteoarthritis of 3 or 4 grade, and maybe with multiple comorbids. So there's a difference between real world evidence and sometimes the evidence that we create only on paper. So inclusion exclusion criteria का पता होना बहुत जरूरी है. Then you need to understand and you need to see that whether the equipment, material, method used is actually relevant to the need of your patient or not. For example, you are doing a research or doing critical appraisal for research or clinical service for pediatric patient. So probably reading an article that is on adult patient will not make any much use to you. You are doing research on, let's say, drug A. So probably you should be focused on articles that discuss comparison of drug A with some other drugs. If you are reading article on drug B, C, and D, probably that is not going to make much sense and you're wasting your time. So be focused and try to see whether your needs are closely matched to the information that is presented in the article. Then again, different protocols are in place, especially in case of clinical trials and randomized control trial. I'm going to show you all these biases in the end, so I'm going to skip that. And again, there are confounding variables, or again, you tend to address these variables only if you yourself know how to address these variables in medical research. And then, are the outcome measures valid for the health condition you are researching? So there are many multiple outcome measures for any condition. For pain, they are different. For surgical condition, they are different. For medical condition, they are different. So if your outcome measure that you commonly use in your research or your clinical practice are closely matching with the outcome measure that are being used in that particular research article, probably it's a good fit. And a very important point that you need to understand is don't get impressed by articles published in good research journals. If the follow-up is not long enough to be meaningful, probably that article does not pass the critical appraisal criteria. Again, I'll give you a quick example of my own specialty field, osteoarthritis of knee joints, or maybe lumbar spondylosis or chronic mechanical back pain. So these are the things that are going to remain with the patient for decades. So if an article says that treatment A is very useful as compared to treatment B for management of chronic knee pain because of osteoarthritis for 3 months, I'm really sorry, that does not mean anything as a clinician to me. My patient is not going to have osteoarthritis for 3 months. He or she is going to have that osteoarthritis for life. I need a long follow-up, probably for 12 months minimum, maybe 3 years, 5 years. So you tell me something that is going to work for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, only then that follow-up is going to be meaningful, right? Maybe someone has a cardiac issue. So the cardiac issue is not going to go off after stenting or cardiac surgery. The patient needs to be followed up for life. So a 3 months follow-up of cardiac surgery would not make any sense. You might want to have a follow-up of 3 years and maybe lifelong. In results, you need to understand, are the demographics clearly mentioned or not? For example, you are working in gynecology and you are focused more on the disease of the female patient. So probably another article which focuses more on male patient perineal diseases is not of relevance to you, right? You are focused more on adult demographics. So maybe elderly population is not your focus. So if you clearly read all these things, you can make sense of the article and whether it is relevant to your need or not. And the most important thing in a clinical trial is that the baseline demographics should be the same between the intervention group and the control group. जिस ग्रुप में दवा या चीज दी जा रही है वो ग्रुप और जिसको एज अ कंट्रोल रखा गया है, तो both groups should be almost similar in age, weight, height, and other background. Because if they are not similar, it is going to be a comparison between apples and oranges. And if the article does that, probably that article is not worth following and reading and quoting and citing. And secondly, if your patient are so different from those in the study that result cannot be applied, so I'm sorry, the critical appraisal, the answer would be that the article is really fine and good and high quality, but the evidence is not relevant to the need of my patient. And again, sometimes people do statistical fishing and they don't apply appropriate test. If you have a little bit background of statistics, you might be able to understand that and pick it up. Then again, you have to, yes, statistical significance has a role to play, and you have to clearly mention, but then you also have to mention the confidence intervals and how large is the difference between the group. And for example, in case of randomized control trial, again, it is important to mention the reporting guidelines. For example, in case of a randomized control trial, the guideline is known as consolidated reporting of a standard of reporting trials. It is absolutely mandatory to mention the consort figure and consort guideline in a randomized control trial. If they are not provided, probably the trial and article is not of high quality. In discussion, again, you can't make your decision based only on discussion, but there are certain important points that would help you identify whether the discussion is of high quality or not. And you can actually apply these principles in then evaluating the article once they come to you as a peer reviewer. For example, are the important result of the study summarized? Do the author attempt to compare and contrast their finding with the local finding and global finding? And it's very important to acknowledge limitation in the article. And if an author or a group of authors, they acknowledge the limitation in their article, it's a very positive sign, which means that they actually have an insight into the shortcomings of their own research. There's nothing like a perfect research in this world. You can take out issues with any kind of research done in any part of the world. So if someone has that kind of insight and clearly mention that these were the limitation of my article that you need to know, probably it's a good article. And if there are any conflict of interest, you might want to read that article with a pinch of salt. The detailed appraisal, which is not basically the focus of this particular webinar, is it would include, number one, sample size estimation. Again, going back. So an article on knee osteoarthritis or cardiac disease having only a sample size of 25 does not mean anything in the real world out there. Why? Because millions and millions of people are living with cardiac disease, with diabetes mellitus, with hypertension, with osteoarthritis and musculoskeletal disorder. So this small sample size of 25 does not mean anything. So you need to clearly know and appraise that how this small sample size was reached. Was it a randomly allocated sample size, or was any statistical tool used to determine the sample size? Then again, you have to clearly and carefully read the graphs. People do manipulate the graphs and the tables as well. And they also do sometimes, not knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, statistical manipulation. So again, I say it again, simply saying this test or this disease or this drug is statistically superior to the other drug because the p-value is less than 0.05 or 0.001 does not mean it is clinically significant in the real world out there. And then you have to see whether confidence intervals are reported. And then there's a discussion about whether you should be reporting relative risk reduction or absolute risk reduction or both. But this is part of the detailed appraisal. And just to give you an idea that how bias can occur at each step of a randomized control trial, which is the gold standard of clinical research. So a bias can be introduced while selecting the patient, while allocating them to different groups. There can be certain confounding factor that can affect the outcome and treatment. You can be sure or unsure of the integrity of intervention, then intention to treat analysis or per protocol analysis. What about the withdrawal and the patient who leave the trials? How do you do the blinding? How the data was collected and how was the analysis reported? So please remember, at every stage, there can be issues. And if you develop this habit of critically analyzing and reading articles, inshallah, one day you will be able to identify these issues. And on another note, again, as a mentor, I can tell you, especially of students, okay, once you start critically appraising articles now, please start writing letters to the editor on them. So I have written around 4 or 5 articles in this way with my student and residents, in which we critically appraise a randomized control trial. We identify the weaknesses and we suggested the improvement, and they were submitted and then published as a letter to the editor in different index biomedical journals. So the summary is that evidence-based medicine can improve the quality of care and the outcome of healthcare interventions. And critical appraisal is one of the important part of the ABM. There are 3 components, and one of the important components is critical appraisal, which you do of the best available evidence out there. There are millions of articles available, and no single human being can actually summarize or read all of the article, even with the help of AI. We all have limited time and increasing responsibilities as we age. So we have to learn and understand the skill of critical appraisal, which is a useful skill, which is a hands-on skill. It can be learned, it can be polished, and it can be mastered. And it does not always require an in-depth knowledge of statistics. So you need to understand that all of us read articles, all of us see patients, and all of us see OPDs. As they say, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. आपने अपने अंदर ना वो एक वो शऊर अपना बेदार करना है कि जिसमें आपने उस आर्टिकल्स में काम की चीज निकालनी है और उसे अप्लाई करना है, रिसर्च में भी और मेडिकल नॉलेज में भी. So I thank you for your time. This is my email. If you need a copy of the presentation, please feel free to send me an email. मैंने अब जो रिक्वेस्ट करनी है आपसे कि बिफोर आई स्टार्ट डूइंग द क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन, आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट यू टू प्लीज ओपन ये जो है QR कोड स्कैन कीजिए और प्लीज मुझे जो है इसका एक फीडबैक दीजिएगा इस वेबिनार का. इट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्योंकि आपने तो टाइम लगा लिया मेरे साथ आधा घंटा जो मैं फर्दर करने हैं इंशाल्लाह उनको मैं बेहतर कर पाऊंगा. So thank you very much. I'm going to share the link of feedback in the chat box as well. So I'm done, Ji. Organizers, please take over. And if there are any question, please let me know. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It was a great session, especially for the medical students. You taught from a very basic level for us medical students. There are a few questions for you. First of all, how do we start a critical appraisal as a medical student? This is the first question, sir.
जी जी, and it's a very good question. बल्कि मैं कहूँगा you should actually start critical appraisal as a student. So if possible, get connected to a senior person in your own department or a senior who has done critical appraisal of couple of articles. That's the first thing. क्योंकि जिंदगी में अगर आपको अच्छा सुपरवाइजर, मेंटर या रहनुमा टीचर मिल जाए, जिंदगी आसान हो जाती है. But sometimes that's not possible. आपको मिलते नहीं है. तो again जो आपको मैंने resources दिए हैं, these resources are available free of cost, online है, easily available है, accessible है, and then you make a group of like-minded student. You go online. First of all, you do tutorials, you see YouTube videos, and you get connected to the community on student for best evidence, and then you start doing critical appraisal yourself. First of all, do critical appraisal of local article, non-index journals जो हमारे यहाँ छोटे मोटे journals होते हैं, because में अक्सर ना low quality articles होते हैं और वो बड़े आराम से पकड़े जाते हैं. उसके बाद फिर जो अच्छे इंडेक्स जर्नल है पाकिस्तान के, उनको क्या नाम है आप क्रिटिकली अप्रेज करें, और उसके बाद फिर आप इंटरनेशनल जर्नल्स पे जाइए और उसके जो आर्टिकल हैं, डिफरेंट काइंड के रिसर्च आर्टिकल हैं, सिस्टमैटिक रिव्यू हैं, उनको आप अपना वो क्रिटिकली अप्रेज करना शुरू कीजिए. सो इट्स अ स्टेप वाइज अप्रोच. यू स्टार्ट विद द बेसिक्स, यू लर्न एज अ टीम, यू लर्न इंडिविजुअली, एंड देन यू कीप ऑन अप्लाइंग इट. द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज बेटा इसको अप्लाई करना है, सिर्फ सीखना नहीं है. करोगे, जितना करोगे उतना बेहतर हो जाएगा इंशाल्लाह. आई होप आई आंसर्ड योर क्वेश्चन. थैंक यू.
Yes, sir. Thank you. There is another question from Zain. He's asking, is there anything we can do with the critical appraisal? Like, can we write any article after doing a critical appraisal?
जी, यही मैंने बात की ना आपसे. क्रिटिकल अप्रेजल पे आर्टिकल तो नहीं लिख पाएंगे, लेकिन देखें जब आप आर्टिकल क्रिटिकली अप्रेज करते हैं ना, तो आप हैरान रह जाते हैं कि many articles, at least the article, the randomized control trial that are being published in Pakistan, मैं at least बात कर रहा हूँ, and I'm talking of the index journals of Pakistan. 3 बड़े index journals हैं, JPMA, JCPSP, PGMS, और इन तीनों में मैंने और मेरे कोलीग्स ने, स्टूडेंट्स ने, रेजिडेंट्स ने, हमने रैंडमाइज कंट्रोल ट्रायल आइडेंटिफाई किए. जब वो पब्लिश होते हैं जिनके अंदर इश्यूज थे, वीकनेसेस थी, प्रॉब्लम्स थे, हमने कैसे आइडेंटिफाई किए? बाय क्रिटिकल अप्रेजल. और जब भी हमने आइडेंटिफाई किए, हमने उन सब के ऊपर एक लेटर टू द एडिटर लिखा, और हम बताना 4-5 लेटर टू द एडिटर लिख चुके हैं. एक हमारा अगले महीने जेपीएमए में पब्लिश हो रहा है कि एक रैंडमाइज कंट्रोल ट्रायल एक फिजिकल थेरेपी टूल के ऊपर आया. उसमें मेरी एक स्टूडेंट थी, क्या नाम है उधर, ये बहरिया की, कराची की. उसने मुझे ईमेल की कि सर मुझे आपने जो बताया था मुझे क्रिटिकल अप्रेजल, उसके मुताबिक इसमें ये प्रॉब्लम्स है. हमने उसको एनालाइज किया प्रॉब्लम से, और हमने उस पर letter to the editor लिखा. तो yes, you can write letter to the editors by doing critical appraisal of articles that are published. और एक और बड़ी मजे की बात यह है कि आजकल most of the articles are published ahead of print, यानी कि वो उनका जो प्रिंट वर्जन है वो आता है लेट्स से 6 महीने बाद, लेकिन वो ऑनलाइन वर्जन आ जाता है 6 महीने पहले. तो आपके पास ऑप्शन होती है कि आप 3-4 महीने पहले होमवर्क करना शुरू कर दो, and as soon as the article is published in the journal in a particular month, you immediately send or submit your letter to the editor with the critical appraisal. And in most of the cases, it gets published as a letter to the editor.
Okay,
Next question, Faizan.
Yes, sir. So there is another question that can we directly submit critical appraisal reports to journals, or we will have to write review articles or letters?
नहीं बेटा, नहीं कोई रिव्यू नहीं. देखो बेसिक देखो, किसी भी जर्नल में ना देयर आर मल्टीपल फॉर्मेट्स ऑफ पब्लिशिंग. आप उसमें रिसर्च आर्टिकल भी पब्लिश करते हो, उसमें सिस्टमैटिक रिव्यू भी पब्लिश करते हो, रिव्यू आर्टिकल भी करते हो, एडिटोरियल भी करते हो, केस रिपोर्ट भी करते हो. उसमें एक सेक्शन होता है, उसे कहते हैं लेटर टू द एडिटर, या उसे कुछ कहते हैं कमेंट्स ऑन द पब्लिश आर्टिकल. सो बेसिकली जिसकी ये मैं बात कर रहा हूँ ना कि जो आप क्रिटिकल अप्रेजल करोगे तो उसको आप सबमिट करोगे डिपेंडिंग ऑन द जर्नल, ईदर एज लेटर टू द एडिटर या कमेंट्स ऑन पब्लिश आर्टिकल्स. फॉर एग्जांपल जेपीएम में जो है ना, जर्नल ऑफ पाकिस्तान मेडिकल एसोसिएशन, वो इसको पब्लिश करता है एज कमेंट ऑन द पब्लिश आर्टिकल, जबकि बाकी तमाम जर्नल्स इंक्लूडिंग जेसीपीएसपी और पाकिस्तान जर्नल ऑफ मेडिकल साइंसेज पीजीएमएस से पब्लिश करता है एज लेटर टू द एडिटर. तो ये दो कैटेगरीज में आप पब्लिश कर सकते हो. ये नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. ये क्वेश्चन एंड आंसर में क्या मैं कुछ आए हैं तो मैं आई एम गोइंग टू आंसर दीज. फॉर एग्जांपल अहमद ने कहा है कि कैन यू एलेबोरेट दीज रिसोर्सेज, कैन यू एलेबोरेट हाउ दीज रिसोर्सेज कैन हेल्प इन जर्नल क्लब्स. सो अगेन आई वुड स्ट्रांगली रिकमेंड, अगेन एवरीथिंग फीड्स इनटू एवरीथिंग. सो बेसिकली आप अगर कोई जर्नल क्लब रन करते हो, जर्नल क्लब में बेसिकली आप क्रिटिकल अप्रेजल ऑफ आर्टिकल्स ही करते हो. So again, depending on the journal club, the kind of support you have, the kind of participants that you have, you might want to stick to a single reporting guideline or a single checklist, or you might want to change the checklist every time just to see the flavor कि जब different checklist use करते हैं तो वो critical appraisal कैसे change हो जाती है. But it is very very important. Okay, how self doing the appraisal checklist is comparable with doing it under a mentor for few time. देखो obviously I strongly believe कि उस्ताद, mentor, टीचर, गाइड, किसी बड़े का हाथ होना ये आपकी जिंदगी बहुत आसान करता है, पर्सनल लाइफ में भी, प्रोफेशनल लाइफ में भी, पढ़ाई में भी, अदरवाइज भी. अगर तो आपको कोई मेंटर मिलता है तो बेहतर है कि उसके साथ मिल के कीजिए. वो आपको शुरू में ना आपको बहुत सारी गलतियां बता देंगे, गाइड कर देंगे. बट अगर कोई मेंटर अवेलेबल नहीं है, कोई गाइड, सुपरवाइजर, टीचर अवेलेबल नहीं है, स्टिल यू कैन गो ऑनलाइन एंड यू कैन डाउनलोड दिस चेकलिस्ट एंड यू कैन डू देम योरसेल्फ. और मैं बताया ना कि आप जाओ उधर वो स्टूडेंट फॉर बेस्ट एविडेंस वाली वेबसाइट पे, वहां बहुत सारे आर्टिकल की क्रिटिकल अप्रेजल पड़ी हुई है. आप वो आर्टिकल फुल टेक्स्ट डाउनलोड करो, अपनी अप्रेजल खुद करो और फिर अपनी अप्रेजल को उस अप्रेजल से कंपेयर कर लो. यू विल गेट टू नो कि आपकी अप्रेजल कितनी अच्छी है, कितनी बुरी है. ठीक है, ओके जी. ये जो समन लारेब ने मुझे किया है कि स्टूडेंट ऑफ ऑर्थोटिक प्रोसेस, मुझे बेटा ईमेल करना. ये दिस इज नॉट द purview of this research writing वाली permission is something different. ये मुझे ईमेल करना, I'll answer you. What is the benefit of doing critical appraisal? बता चुके हैं. स्पीड रीडिंग करोगे आप, क्वालिटी इंफॉर्मेशन पिक कर सकते हो और लेटर टू एडिटर्स लिख सकते हो और आपकी अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग बेहतर होगी और अल्टीमेटली आपकी क्वालिटी ऑफ केयर जो है ना वो बेहतर होगी और आपके राइटिंग स्किल्स इंप्रूव हो जाएंगे. ओके ओके, एनी अदर क्वेश्चन? लेट मी गो टू द चैट. सो प्लीज अपना ये जो है अपना ये मैं आपको लिंक भेज रहा हूँ, अपने इसको फीडबैक मुझे प्लीज जरूर दीजिएगा. इट विल हेल्प मी इम्प्रूव द क्वालिटी ऑफ माय फ्यूचर जो है ना अपना जो वर्कशॉप्स, वेबिनार्स. ये शेख मोहम्मद लिखे
to me too. I will then send it to the WhatsApp group where all the participants have been added.
बहुत शुक्रिया. एक आखिरी एक क्वेश्चन है, ये शेख मोहम्मद ने किया है. इज देयर एनी बेनिफिट, यार बहुत सारे आ रहे हैं, इज देयर एनी बेनिफिट टू राइटिंग लेटर टू द एडिटर? बात वो ये देखें बेटे, लेटर टू द एडिटर में ना एक क्या नाम वो है, इट्स अ फॉर्म ऑफ राइटिंग. एक बात क्लियर कर दो, लेटर टू एडिटर का कोई क्रेडिट नहीं. जो अक्सर लोगों को हमारे होता है प्रॉब्लम क्रेडिट का, जी एचईसी मानती है नहीं मानती, पीएमडीसी मानती है नहीं मानती, कोई नहीं मानता. लेटर टू एडिटर बेसिकली आपका अपना एक शौक है. इट इज अ क्वेस्ट दैट आई नो समथिंग, आई वांट टू कम्युनिकेट विद द वाइडर वर्ल्ड यूजिंग अ टूल एंड दैट इज लेटर टू द एडिटर. और लोग क्या नाम फिर उस पर करते हैं अपना, लिखते हैं और क्या कहते हैं उसको वो शेयर करते हैं. सो उसका उस तरह फायदा ये है कि आपको लिखने का अंदाज आता है, बिकॉज खा आप लेटर टू एडिटर लिखें, खा पूरा एक रिसर्च आर्टिकल लिखने का स्टाइल तो वही होगा ना, रेफरेंसिंग तो वैसे ही करनी पड़ेगी आपको, सबमिशन का तरीका भी वही होगा. तो यू विल लर्न मेनी थिंग्स व्हाइल यू राइट अ लेटर टू द एडिटर. एंड वंस यू राइट अ कपल ऑफ लेटर टू द एडिटर, आपका एतमाद बढ़ेगा, आपको लिखने का अंदाज आएगा और आपके लिए फिर मजीद अच्छा लिखना इंशाल्लाह बेहतर हो जाएगा. सो आई वुड स्ट्रांगली रिकमेंड कि लेटर टू द एडिटर लिखा कीजिए. ओके, do we have any links or pages where we can find local and national articles? पाकिस्तान की एक ही आपको पता है कि वो है डेटाबेस है, उसका नाम है PACMedinet. PACMedinet.com. ये हमारी नेशनल डेटाबेस है, इस पे जितने पाकिस्तान के बायोमेडिकल जर्नल्स हैं 105, उन सब के क्या नाम है ना लिंक्स और उनकी डिटेल मौजूद है. सो PACMedinet इज द आंसर. ओके, और कोई क्वेश्चन? डज नहीं बेटे महानूर, HEC does not approve letter to editor and you don't need any HEC approval for that. Life is beyond going HEC and CPSP. You don't do everything for HEC and CPSP. You do things for your own self to make the world a better place and to voice your concerns. आपने एक रिसर्च आर्टिकल देखा, उसमें आपने प्रॉब्लम देखा, and you want to tell the author and the wider scientific community, this is not right. So whether HEC uska credit de raha de, you should be writing a letter to the editor. It is part of a communication skill. Communication skill can be verbal, like I'm talking to you. It could be a written. So why don't you polish your communication skills? So छोड़े HEC देता नहीं देता, आप लोग letter to the editor जरूर लिखिए, critical appraisals कीजिए, as individual कीजिए. Okay. Question Fatima, even with limited, तो बेटा वही है, देखे ना, first of all learn the art of critical appraisal. First of all learn basic statistics. मैंने आपको जो बहुत सारे resources दिए हैं उसमें go through कीजिए, अपनी stats को थोड़ा polish कीजिए, multiple research articles पढ़िए, multiple time पहले उसे खुद आप evaluate कीजिए. Once you have a sort of confidence कि I will be able to do it adequately, only then you start writing letter to the editors. Cochrane रॉब टूल समझ नहीं आ रहा, क्या करूं? अच्छा मैडम डॉक्टर लुबना, अच्छा अगेन Cochrane उसमें दो ऑप्शन है. पहली ऑप्शन ये है कि आप YouTube इनके ट्यूटोरियल्स देख लें. नंबर 2 ये हो सकता है कि Cochrane का अपना जो है वो एक लर्निंग पोर्टल है, उस पर आप रजिस्टर हो जाएं, उस पर आप जाके देख सकते हैं. और तीसरा वो है कि जिस तरह ये खान वाले अक्सर करवाते हैं सिस्टमैटिक रिव्यू की वर्कशॉप्स, उनमें किसी के साथ कनेक्ट हो जाए, वो वर्कशॉप कीजिए, तो वो फिर आपको क्या इसके बारे में बता देंगे. बट अगेन इट्स अ बिट, ये थोड़ा हायर एंड है, इसलिए मैं इसके बारे में बात नहीं की थी, क्योंकि सिस्टमैटिक रिव्यूज में इसकी बहुत वैल्यू है आजकल. प्लीज शेयर लिंक ऑफ एनी लेटर रिटन बाय यू. आप बेटा मेरा उसमें जाके गूगल आउट कर लो, मेरा नाम राठौर FA के नाम से या फारूक राठौर के नाम से, या मुझे ईमेल कर दो तो मैं आपको लिंक भिजवा दूंगा. अगले महीने JPMA में मई में वैसे भी मेरा एक लेटर टू एडिटर आ जाएगा क्रिटिकल अप्रेजल वाला, मिस रोमा रऊफ के साथ, वो देख लेना आप, ठीक है. एनी अदर क्वेश्चन जी? Faizan, any other question?
No, sir. These were the only questions. You have covered yourself. So thanks a lot for covering all these questions and giving us so much time.
बहुत शुक्रिया अपना. थैंक यू सब. अल्लाह हाफिज, अपना ख्याल रखिएगा. खुदा हाफिज. अस्सलाम वालेकुम.
Sir, thank you, sir. Allah Hafiz, sir.
अल्लाह हाफिज. अस्सलाम वालेकुम.